Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you may be located. I'm Jason Anderson, excited to present today's topic about proposal software and AI hype and how these things meet. And hopefully we can together cut through some of that proposal AI hype and make some sense of this rapidly changing environment that we all find ourselves in. Just as a quick introduction, I'm Jason. I've been with Expedience now for about 8 years. My background's deep in sales enablement and sales process efficiencies, and technology is well within my lifeblood as well. I've actually deployed and purchased proposal automation software a number of times. So I've got some from the kind of the other side of the table, so to speak. I've got some experience that I wanted to share with everyone here today, and I like to bring these topics to our customers. I do. To that point, I see some of our existing customers on this presentation. Welcome back. I'll tell you the materials here was intended probably more for an audience less familiar with our software and how it works, but I think you'll get a lot out of this presentation as well. But there's my contact information, what have you. Please feel invited to reach out to me without any other invitation required. Today's discussion will kind of center on these topics. We'll talk about generative AI and sort of why all of the hype exists today in Gen AI, specifically when it comes to automation, and proposals are a kind of a core area that's frequently used as an example for where that software fits well. We'll talk about it versus proposal automation software. Where are they the same? Are they different? How they might support each other? I'll then show you some tools. I'll show you our approach, Expedience's approach to proposal automation, and I'll show you Microsoft's approach to generative AI with Copilot, and then we'll have a little Q&A session at the end. Sort of how to play along at home, if you will. Wanted to invite everyone to participate. I'll start in PowerPoint here and just going through some topics to hopefully create a framework that we can use to chat deeper about these ideas. And then I'll get into, like I said, a demonstration of the applications that I'm most familiar with, our software here and Copilot. I invite you to ask questions at any time. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat option. If you go in and just chat your question whenever it comes up to you, I'll just let them stack up. I won't stop down right then to answer those questions, but I'll just let them stack up such that at the end of this session, we'll go over there and answer all of those questions. And there's my email address. So again, that invitation exists. If we're not able to adequately cover your questions or your ideas, what have you, in this discussion, well, then let's chat afterwards. So if I were to ask everyone, of course I can't see you, but if I were to ask everyone to please raise your hands as to who's heard about AI or been beaten by all of the news articles about AI, I think all of our hands would immediately go up. And I think it probably comes for reasons like this. Too many of us have probably sat through a discussion like this about, hey, let's use this technology. It's awesome. I just used it to write a poem about our dog. Now let's remodel our whole business around it. Some silliness, but certainly a lot of excitement, right? And to that point of hype and excitement, this is Gartner's hype cycle on any new technology, the things that happen around expectations over time. They talk about how a new breakthrough innovation occurs, and there's this peak of inflated expectations, and then this trough of delusionment, and eventually towards this plateau of productivity. We're somewhere between the peak of inflated expectations, and maybe we're halfway down the hill or moving down that hill towards the trough of disillusionment, meaning that we get expectations set too high, that the reality of where the technology is today, or maybe even our understanding of technology, shifts, and where it fits and where it doesn't fit, then starts to really flesh out in a way that we might have been disappointed up front, but ultimately see an uptick in the productivity of this new innovation. I think that's probably what we're all feeling in one way or another right now. And I'll say from a proposal perspective, I thought this was quite funny how we have this idea that AI can turn this single bullet point into a proposal that I can pretend I wrote. The gentleman on the left is saying to the person on the right, saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if AI could take this whole proposal and turn it back into just one bullet so I could pretend I read it?" There is some of that going on, right? That there's a little bit of a left hand, right hand around how this technology might be embraced. I'll tell you just on this point, it's a silly slide, but there is an interesting idea to share about this as well, that in this exchange between the left hand and right hand of these two frames, more and more customers are issuing RFPs and proposal requests and asking the vendors or the participants, the people that are creating the proposals, to identify what percentage of the content in the proposal is created by AI. So there's going to be a greater degree of transparency required as to content and where it comes from. That hopefully, well, I'll maybe illustrate some of these points and some of the challenges along the way. So I hear frequently, I'll talk to customers weekly that they'll say something like, "We want AI in our proposal process," and I go, "Great, great. What do you want to do with AI? Where would you like to see it involved?" And then it's crickets. Frequently, it's crickets. They don't know, and why don't they know? It's for a number of reasons, and confusion's quite expectable where we're at today. First and foremost, proposals themselves for these organizations, and maybe your organizations as a large portion, are rarely mapped out, rarely measured. We don't know often how many people touch, how long it takes us to cycle from one process step to the next. They're rarely properly mapped out and measured in a way that we know what's broken or how to best fix it. Frequently, and over the history of the 8 years I've now been with Expedience, I talked about having deployed Expedience years ago. That was 10 years ago. Over these last 8 years, the bulk of my conversations have been customers that were in this phase of saying, "Gosh, we know it's broken, but we're not certain how broken or where it's broken or how we best move it forward." That's been the conversation. But now we've got this new emerging technology as well, which adds complexity. Lots of voices in the room, the different technologies with that flush of excitements and disappointments I was talking about a moment ago. And on top of that, the fears. There are fears that we might all bring to that equation of just, gosh, I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to miss out on this next wave. I also fear maybe what impact this might have on the value I add or my role, or maybe I'm afraid of betting on the wrong horse, so to speak, the wrong technology. And I used this image a few months back when I provided a presentation on this same topic. It reminds me very much, for those of us old enough to remember VHS versus Betamax tapes or video cassettes, right? These were different competing technologies, and we don't know which one's going to take off. It feels that way in some degrees with AI today. And proposals make the problem, like I said, even more complex. So I create a little equation here around why it's even more complex for proposals, because proposals are important. These are lifebloods of our business development process. It's what our organizations depend on to help generate revenue. But we've got a complicated process today in place to build that proposal, and we've got this flood of technologies and options and changes, and those things equal this environment that most of us find ourselves in, or many of us find ourselves in today, of just being overwhelmed with the approach that we should consider, which technologies, if technologies. A lot of folks are sort of overwhelmed to the point of saying, "I don't know if I can do anything right now. I think we got to leave everything as broken as it is with this complicated process because I fear making the wrong decision." That's really common when we're overwhelmed. So let's start to break this down a little bit. Let me break down and dig in a little bit around proposal automation, typical, traditional. How do we create efficiencies around a proposal document? And then let's talk about generative AI, because these are two separate but complementary technologies. And I'll hopefully try to describe that as well. So this may seem a simpleton, but I just think this is helpful to start to talk about, well, what goes in today into a proposal? Everything. Just think about, well, we've got templates. Oftentimes we've got a branded cover page and cover letters and elements like headers and footers or other template sort of elements that help drive that client-facing document. We've got stuff we've written before, existing proposal content that's oftentimes used to create the proposal. Then we've got to make new stuff. We got to create new elements to answer customer-specific or client-specific, opportunity-specific details, or invent answers to things that we haven't faced before that might be more repetitive in the future. We've got other supporting materials. We've got charts and graphs and insurance certificates and other supporting materials that help create that ultimate document that we're going to present the customer. And all of these elements in hope and in theory will be guided by our branding and our formatting and our approach to presenting of the business and the light that it chooses that we would like to have it presented. All of these pieces together are sort of what goes into that proposal. And I think as we start to kind of think about this together, it'll start to make sense. Well, where AI might play in. But let me, before we get into the AI side of things, let's talk about that one bullet that talked about proposal content, the existing content. These are things commonly like methodology overviews or process descriptions, assumptions, disclaimers, things that we found effective, winning content from previous proposals. It's our gold standard content that we found to be very persuasive or effective. It might include resumes, it might include case studies or other elements. These are things that you'd want to have vetted and approved. You'd want to have accurate and consistent and current, meaning that I don't want the list of assumptions from 3 years ago. I want the ones as we've evolved them last month. The accurate from 3 years ago isn't accurate today with some of these elements. I want this to be trusted, vetted, and approved content. These are areas that you may already know from playing with ChatGPT. This is not the strength of the AI arm, the Gen AI arm of the tools. We'll talk more about that. But this content library of vetted and approved content that's a traditional sort of mainstay of proposal automation becomes and retains that position as a cornerstone of that next proposal. If I've got a dozen sales individuals or proposal experts that are answering the same question, I don't want a dozen different variations of an answer, even if it's sort of based on good stuff. I want this correct answer, this list of these specific trusted and vetted and approved and again, refined answers, refined content. Gen AI is on the other side of the coin, right? Where it's around that indenting. Gen AI is great for things like help me create win themes. And I've got examples of some of these I'll show as well, or brainstorm, or help me start. I need to write something brand new. Give me a starting spot that I can write something brand new, or I can give it a list of ideas or thoughts. And Gen AI is excellent at organizing and producing some outlines for me to follow, to shorten or to summarize. If you've got Excel RFPs, and Excel RFPs frequently are known to give me a character count restriction. Maybe we've got a piece of content right now that I need to take from 1,000 characters to 500 characters. Beautiful use of Copilot or Gen AI, and I'll show some of those as well, I hope. Maybe doing clarification questions. Help me take a piece of content from a customer and rewrite this in a way that I can, or phrase a question that I can ask them to rewrite that question. Maybe I have an existing piece of content that I'd like to evolve or take to the next level, or bring it to an existing, to maybe taking an existing content to a new market. Maybe I've got a piece of content, but we're now approaching the higher ed market, and it's a new market for us. This is really written around XYZ industry, and I want to give existing content to the Gen AI tool and have it help me kind of craft this content in a way that it's more aligned with that higher ed example. The last example is a killer title or exec summaries. If these things come at the end of a long, exhausting road, right? We've created a proposal and now we're trying to summarize it. Oh, we're out of gas, we're out of time. Gen AI can be a very helpful tool of taking a bunch of concepts or a bunch of content and say, give me a killer title, give me a one paragraph summary of everything here that I can use to really help evolve or iterate my exec summary. So we all know, but with invention comes problems. My magic 8 ball, I made it say, not sure. I don't know what it said initially, but I thought of a lot of different things it could say. Like, your guess is as good as mine. It's not that bad. I don't mean to be dismissive, but certainly it's not 100% consistent. You could have the exact same prompt that you would give an AI tool for the exact same existing piece of content and ask for that exact same rewrite that I just described a moment ago, and get multiple variations of that answer or that piece of content, even, again, all based on the same inputs. And so there's an unpredictability and inaccuracy. This requires proofreading. This requires aligning it with a corporate voice and formatting it and fixing it. Gen AI is really tailored around, turned around. I don't know the right word I want to use there. Focused on content, text. Right? There are some other AI tools out there that do a lot of really cool visual stuff as well, or images, or graphics, etc. But inevitably, aligning that output with what my document has right now takes effort and takes some degree of, like I said, some proofing, some fixing along the way, changing words, aligning, making things more accurate, etc. So there's some downside to this. So going back to that, the inputs of what goes into a proposal slide a second ago, Gen AI really fits nicely here in this category. Those other categories are still what I would say are excellent examples where traditional proposal automation, like Expedience, like our tools do, or all of those areas are the areas that our software fits nicely in. And this Gen AI is a beautiful complementary asset when it comes to that creating of the new stuff. So I talked about the problems with Gen AI. How do I make it better? How do I improve the outputs? I came up with this phrase "good food" when I was writing the slide. I don't know. So if we can give the Gen AI, if we can give generative AI better inputs, especially that content in that proposal content library is a wonderful input for Gen AI to produce for us great content, especially when I add to that content. By the way, they call that grounding, vetted content. When I give Gen AI, when I give generative AI an existing thing, whatever that thing might be, and say, create something, create an answer for me, create something new for me, by giving it that thing or those things, that grounding prospect, that's where I can really both provide again direction and again additional details that it can use to do a better job for me, especially when I then frame that thing with some great context and great instructions. This gives us the best opportunity for the output from Gen AI to be useful and helpful and usable, less broken, less wrong, less required to fix it. There's still inevitably I've got to again fix formatting. There's a lot to be done regardless. But this process gives the best framework for generative AI to be a really effective assistant for that writing of that new stuff process. So this is kind of what I'm trying to describe, this idea of taking great stuff that we have right now, whether that be from an existing proposal even, but even more so from those outputs of that vetted and approved, curated, optimized content that's in our content library and your repository of reusable elements brought to Gen AI to help us again iterate, evolve, create a new version of. And then take the outputs from that Gen AI, that's that black arrow coming back over to the content library. Those outputs aren't just usable for that proposal itself, but they're also usable or very valuable. Now say, great, we've now tested it, we've fixed it, we've formatted it, we've fixed the inaccuracies along the way of the output from the AI tool. We could now lock that down in the content library so it becomes something that's more readily accessible again and again. It then moves from that probabilistic side of AI into the deterministic side of a content library, that left-hand side. So that's the framework I wanted to kind of give up front. That's the sort of the I don't want to call it boring. I hope it's not too boring, but that's the PowerPoint portion of the show. And I wanted to then kind of change gears and talk to you about show you these tools. I'm going to show you both the proposal automation side of that equation, and how Expedience approaches those things. And then I want to show you how we work alongside of Microsoft's AI tool, which is called Copilot. And I'll show you how Copilot kind of has really evolved this in a beautiful way. Going to show how they work together, I hope. And again, questions as they may come up, please feel free to chat them in your chat box down at the bottom of the Zoom panel, what have you. So just for those that don't know, our software, Expedience's proposal automation software, lives inside of Microsoft Word. And there's a standard version of Word. I'm on the new version. I'm using the Copilot enabled version of Word, and that'll be helpful, obviously, as I want to demonstrate to you Copilot. Just for those of you who launch Word and don't see that select icon to press blah, 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 you won't. You're obviously not yet on that version of Copilot. It's a separate license from Microsoft. They charge you extra for Copilot. It's not a crazy amount extra, but it is extra. There are organizations that are slowly embracing that, but it is with every new version of any new application, it takes a little time. But our software, like I mentioned, is native to Word and makes beautiful use of that Copilot tool. These tabs at the top of this Word document are our software running natively inside of Microsoft Word. I'll start here. When I was talking again and again about the value of those vetted and approved records, those things like our methodology, our process, our disclaimer, our insurance certificate. This is our content library where those things are stored right here in Word as drop-down menus. Now, I should mention to you the categories here, these are called galleries. These icons and the way the content is structured is entirely up to your content. But the idea would be that we create a framework for you to lock down those most recently or most commonly used element around our element here, whatever that might include, or maybe this item over here, or maybe these diagrams that describe our XYZ process, whatever they might be. All of those, or maybe a resume. This is really common for service organizations that we may need to store and access resumes that we're positioning for a project or for a specific customer need. Important to show you, for you to know about our tools, because we live in Word, our content in the content library is beautifully enriched with fonts and formats and all of your branding attributes. When I talked about that last kind of rung of the ladder, if you will, of that what goes into the proposal, I talked about branding and formatting. These records are controlled by this tool we call Style Palette. And I won't go into much detail here, but just to allude to the fact that this is where we lock down your branding attributes, your headings, your footings, your headers or footers, your how you do bulleted lists, your how you do your outline of your cover pages, or your commonly reused elements like tables or what have you. All of your branding and formatting attributes are locked down in that tool called Style Palette. Those styles are applied to the content in the library in a way that when I'm dropping these records in, they all look exactly consistent. That font and format and those bullets down there are the same as this font and format and these bullets up here, if there happen to be any. There aren't. Beyond that, because the content library and because our tool lives inside of Word, anything that Word can support could be in this content library, including images. I dropped in this item down here because that's actually an embedded Excel spreadsheet. If I just double click that, you'll see it launches Excel right here from within Word. I could have Word do, I'm sorry, Excel do, oh, did I just delete the whole thing? Oh, fun. Let me do that again. I just deleted the whole darn thing. I'll drop it back in. This is that overview. That's that object of Excel, right? Like you go make Excel happen and then show you that if I don't break it and I just type in numbers, Excel does Excel stuff and I stay within my Word document. This is an embedded PowerPoint slide. So if I had some commonly reused diagram, but I want to change what exhibit this is for this customer, it's actually not exhibit A, it's exhibit this. So just to, again, show you a couple of ideas. The content library in our tool is quite robust and flexible, and the kinds of things they can store super dynamic stuff, way beyond just text that the AI tool I'm going to show you in a second can produce for me. But again, nicely vetted and approved formatted content that's at my fingertips that can be used in a number of ways. I'll give you a couple of very quick examples. So I've got a simpleton kind of questionnaire back here. I'll just zoom in a little bit to make it bigger for you to see. But I could use this content library to say, give me the best answers we have to this topic. Right, so maybe this was off of an outline I created from a real complex RFP, or maybe it's a simple RFI or what have you. I could say, perfect, that's the piece of content I want. I could look at it first to make sure that content's appropriate. And then if I've decided that's what I want, I can drop it directly into this document. So this is the idea of getting using this content library to help kind of guide the process. If I have a dozen different questionnaires that my team is working on right now that are all asking for this topic of history and vision and culture, it's extremely predictable. It's highly directable. We know what people will use and find when they're looking for that for that result, right? So again, I go look for that next question. Here are the pieces of content I have. I can quickly move through the process of starting to assemble our best of breed existing content. Oh, if I needed now to re-envision this is certainly where I could use Copilot, and I'll do that here in a second. Let me show one other good use case or example of how this content library is frequently used in a very predictable way. This is what we call a PDQ. It's an automated template, and this particular template sort of assumes where my first example was a questionnaire where customers issued me a list of topics in some specific order that I need to now assemble kind of on a unique one-off basis for that particular questionnaire. This is maybe what we call a proactive proposal, or maybe this is a statement of work or another contract vehicle that I'm wanting to pull from that content library those assets that are most important to help, again, demonstrate our capabilities for these specific service areas or offerings, whatever they might include. This particular template, I could make some selections like this to say, great, it's to include these elements, yes, no's, and maybes on those products, and I want to include this item. You'll notice this template can have lots of kind of built-in functionality. When I made those selections of service offerings, it selected for me other records. In this case, the example says, well, based on those service areas you selected, these are the individuals whose resumes or CVs I might want to include. When I chose that technology, it says these are the options you may want to consider from a technical perspective. Notice this rule in this area of this proposal document says you may choose only one pricing model, Jason. You can't say this way and that way. If I choose one, it unchecks the other for me automatically. It could make me say I have to choose at least one. A number of rules can be built into these templates themselves, but the goal would be this, that we give some guidance to a proposal writer or a salesperson or whomever that whatever role they may sit in, what seat they may sit in, and help them produce a great starting spot of the client-facing document. This is sort of my first draft for my client-facing proposal. You'll see this particular document has this cover page, came in as part of this template. It produced this cover letter for me, as well as the headers and footers, all of the standing pieces. It even created this table of contents for me based on my selections. Obviously, I selected core HR and time off and compensation as I was going through my little willy-nilly selections up front. Really, again, like I mentioned, all of the starting spot I might need for that first draft of my client-facing document. The content itself in the content library frequently is threaded with these things we call placeholders. These are spots of personalization. I might say this is for Coca-Cola Company. That's who I'm producing this proposal for, and I'm going to pretend that their short name is Coke just because I like it. It's fast for me to type. I can have drop downs like this. You'll notice that as I'm making these selections throughout this document, wherever that client name long or client name short or that industry value is required, they're all completed in one fell swoop. It's a very predictable way of creating, again, nice standing starter spot content, whether that be boilerplate or overviews of processes and methodologies or what have you, that can be nicely personalized or tailored for that opportunity specific with opportunity specific information. By the way, there's a number of ways I could interact with those placeholders, including pulling in content from Outlook or anything that Outlook talks to, like other CRM tools, or I could go through here and use this form to complete, or I can drag and drop these fields throughout to really guide this process of identifying or determining or defining each of these placeholder values. So that's the framework of our tool set. It's this content library I was mentioning before that sits right here in Word, governed by these styles that can be used a record at a time in my first example with that questionnaire, or a document at a time. But this stays as a Word document in a very awesome way, right? So if I were working with a wide team of subject experts, like many of us do, we have maybe specific assignments to subject experts to help us craft an area of the proposal or to build out our engineering example of our what have you, solution to this customer's problem, what have you. These are not things that come from a content library. Because our tools live inside of Microsoft Word, this stays a Word document all along. I can share it widely. And everyone else along the way, all of my contributors or my my subject experts, etc. They don't have to leave Word. They can simply, I could post this on Teams. I could email this directly to a subject expert. I could, well, share this in any, I could put it on SharePoint and have people check in and check out as we're iterating and evolving with comments and highlights and notes that help us all work in ways that we're familiar, right? It doesn't have to embrace this automation I'm describing here. Does not require us abandoning ship on all of those processes that I have or that you may have in place right now to collaborate, especially with people that they wouldn't probably consider their day job as proposal writer. Getting them to engage with Word becomes an easier platform to do so. So all of these are going back to my PowerPoint presentation. Can I go back to the PowerPoint presentation? I hope I can. Going back to the PowerPoint presentation of this image back here, all of what I've just been talking about so far is around kind of how Expedience, our approach to solving these parts of the challenge of we've got great stuff. How do we create some real consistency and efficiency to build out that starting spot of the document before we have to now do a lot of the heavy lifting, the hard stuff around creating the new stuff categories, right? So let me talk about that new stuff and how the world is changing with Copilot specifically. So Microsoft Copilot, for those of you, like I mentioned, that may not have it today, is the AI solution of Microsoft's that sits inside of Word. And I'll just kind of arrange it like this. It becomes a little easier if I make this pane bigger and this pane over here smaller. I'll tell you what, let me do the same thing, but let me do it instead of there. Let's do it back here. Here's apologies, arguing with myself about the best way. I'll start giving a whole brand new place. Maybe I've got an existing piece of content that maybe I have a piece of content that I've been provided from a subject matter expert around our overview. Now I pulled it from my content library, but just so I had a piece of content. That's for my little pretend example that I wanted to show you Copilot right now. I wanted to show you this idea, and I just needed something. So in my example right now, I'm pretending that this was sent to me by the engineering department, and this is our roadmap that we're wanting to share with a customer. They're asking for our roadmap maybe in their RFP, or I want to include that in my template-driven proposal, whatever my example might be. But now I'll go ahead and launch Copilot and have it in that side pane over here and make it a little bigger like I was doing a moment ago to show you how it might help me take what was written, and this is all accurate, I'm certain this came from the right source. But as I read their contributions, new UX, implementing algorithms and mechanisms and ML, it's a lot of acronyms and jargon that my customers may or may not know. Right. So here's an excellent use of a demonstration of how Copilot now becomes, or generically, I'll call it generative AI, because I could do this same thing with ChatGPT. Copilot, by the way, Microsoft's huge investor in OpenAI, the manufacturer, the company behind ChatGPT, and has incorporated ChatGPT into this. Is powered by ChatGPT, 100% secure. I should share with people. That's a frequent question. It's behind your firewall. It's not, your content isn't shared out there with the world. They don't see your stuff. You don't. You purely have again control over this environment. But now let's go to my example. So here's the piece of content. Here's Copilot sitting over here. I love what they've written, but I need to align this with our corporate voice and give some instructions. So Expedience has this tool we call our prompt tool, where I can store, instead of having to write, I can ask Copilot manually, right? I could write out a prompt, but we have a tool that helps us store these prompts in a way that says, great, help me with what I'm calling now my SME rewrite prompt, right? And so I've just brought that prompt now onto the clipboard, and I'll drop it directly in to Copilot. And what it says right there is take the technical pieces out of this piece of content, right? I'll zoom back up and show you what it did right before I hit the go button, right? It says, great. I said in my prompt, rewrite this example to make it universally understandable, make it persuasive, make it more professional, remove technical jargon, right? And this could be anything that's appropriate for your business or your industry. This example is just meant to be, look, this is how I could take a fairly technical piece of content and have it help me kind of redefine it. And this is what it's produced for me. I'll just go ahead and click the insert button and we'll look at it over here in Word. But here is the output that it produced for me, right? It's this, where it's at bullets 1, 2, and 3, it says introducing a new user experience. It defined that UX as user experience and customers improving the accuracy and data checks, etc. So this is that invention element that we were describing up front. This may not be 100% accurate, right? There may be elements that are broken in what it's presenting for me, or it may have gotten something slightly wrong. You will notice, by the way, when there's another example I'll show you that it gives me references. If what it produced is based on something outside of just the text of the document, it'll tell me, hey, by the way, I'm referencing this area or that area of the documents. But in this particular case, I had just a simple few paragraphs of text, and it's using those texts to guide this direction for me immediately. So that's one example of Copilot being a very helpful arm in my creation. You wouldn't leave both the old and the new alongside. There's some fixing and formatting that I may very well want to do to align this with my proposal. By the way, if I needed to align this with my proposal, that document itself, that style palette tool becomes beautifully engaged in aligning this text to fit in our format and our branding attributes that we've locked down within the style palette tool to this output. So that's example one of here's Copilot working right alongside of my content library tools, and a really awesome way to help us sort of again iterate and evolve content from the content library, or from, in this case, from a subject matter expert who gave me content that needed some alignment with our corporate voice. Now I'm going to change back to that RFP example I wanted to share with you. I love this example a lot, and that's probably why why I Freudianly kind of brought it up first as my first example, because this is where I think it's going to be able to really showcase some of the power of generative AI, not just in the simple, hey, fix these words with some other words. But now I'm going to ask it to do some assessment for me. So here's an incoming RFP that I've just received from this company, BigCo. And it's got lots of stuff, as they often do, right? Where it's got context and objectives and backgrounds and the requirements, and I probably have to do a lot of processing. I may have to run a bid no bid process as to whether or not we even want to bid for this work. Maybe I need to start crafting win themes before I start making assignments. Maybe I want to create some instructions for my writers as to how we want content crafted to help us guide this process, help us guide our proposal down the path we want it to go. Let's start with the win theme example. This is, I think, a real, I don't know, it's a powerful example. My prompt tool, I can give it more details about our company, right? So Copilot, this tool, all it's framed with right now in this example is well, it's just an AI agent waiting to do things for me. It's not been giving any context at all. So I would start with maybe a prompt like this one from my prompt library that says, hey, let me tell you who we are and what we do as a company, right? We've got so many employees. This is what we do well. This is how we win business. This is where we really excel. And I asked it to give me a little handshake to say that it understands. And Copilot came back and says, hey, I understand what you guys do and what you're trying to accomplish. I now might want to say, maybe to help me analyze whether or not we should even bid for this work. So this is a different prompt that I've got staged right now in our prompt tool that I could then drop in to Copilot and say, great, help me understand whether we should bid for this work. Analyze this and look for goods and bads, things that I should call out to my leadership team, explaining why I've recommended that we do or we do not invest the resources in responding to this RFP. So it's taking a few moments as it goes through, but it's probably done now. Let's go ahead and do it while it's still waiting. I can use it. Okay, now it's done. Now it moves a bit back down. So look what Copilot did. It says, hey, listen, I knew about you. You told me about you as an organization. And based on what you've told me, this is a real strategic fit. This aligns with your background in these things. And these are those links I was trying to allude to a moment ago, that this shows me, hey, within this document, what it saw that made me think this was a strength of yours. Here's another strength about the client size. Because of the size of the organization, they felt like this is important to call out. That's a piece of important facts that we want to pull out, the fact that they've got a bunch of employees, and that aligns with other objectives I might have given it. Here's another piece that says this is a highly growth-oriented opportunity, right? Maybe here's another that's good with the downside of the thing. Hey, listen, there's a lot of competition. They've engaged this outside company, a strategic advisor. Where was that at in this document? Now, we have another tool over here that I'm not talking about in this discussion, just because I told myself to try to keep things as simple as possible. This proposal manager tool, just to allude to it for a moment, is another ribbon that would allow me to action on these things a little differently, or I could mark them up, add my own thoughts. The idea of using Copilot or any Gen AI tool just carte blanche and giving and taking it immediately and using it word for word probably isn't a good strategy, right? But it is a very helpful tool to help guide me. This tool, this proposal manager tool, is when it's guiding me, allows me to mark up this RFP and action on it appropriately. I'll just leave it there for now. But certainly it's a kind of a very powerful arm, kind of a powerful 1-2 punch, if you will, using Copilot to do some analysis for me, and then using, in this case, my proposal manager tool I'm talking about now to help leverage that information. Certainly, if I let's just go do one more thing while we're here. I was going to leave it there, but just because I'm here and I think we have a minute extra, let me just go choose this wind themes. Right. So this is another ask. I've told it its role is to be a strategic advisor for me, Copilot's role that is. But now I'm asking it, help me give some instructions to my proposal writers, right? Give them further instructions. Help us emphasize strengths. It knows our strengths. Remember that context I've already given it, and help look at the objectives of this organization, of this RFP, and help align kind of the instructions that we might want to provide a subject matter expert community to help contribute. So that's what it's doing now for me. It's a really awesome, it's a really awesome use. This again, is it 100% right? Probably not. Is it, but is it 100% helpful? Definitely. Right? Where I could come in and say, great, there's some constraints here. They're seeking to minimize customization. Again, if I've given you as my subject expert this section of this that 50-page document, I've assigned you section, this and section that, and you may or may not have the time or capability even of digesting the entire RFP to better understand what to do and how to respond. This output is very helpful for me to say, great, let's take this information. Maybe I'll just copy it, and I might go put this on my instructions to my subject expert to say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you some assignments on this RFP, but I want you to know these things about we've got some gaps and we've got some win themes, and I want you to use this to help kind of fuel your contributions that you're writing to align with what we think is going to be most effective. Super powerful use of this technology. I've got about an hour's worth of awesome examples like this that I really argued with myself, and you could even hear it as I'm arguing myself about which to show first here in the meeting itself or this presentation itself. But certainly, if you'd like to get creative and thinking outside of the box, feel free to reach out to me. Let's talk more about other ways that we've really framed up sort of kind of the synergy of using these tools within our framework of our proposal software. That might be helpful to you. So with that, let me just go back to the PowerPoint slide, and I've got a Q&A slide that I can use to at least have something to look at while I'm looking at questions that I've received along the way to talk about, to maybe answer some of these questions now. There's my, by the way, email address. If you have to jump off early, just don't hesitate to jot that down if you want to reach out to me directly. But first question I had was about Copilot licensing. It's a great question. I kind of briefly mentioned that it's a separate licensed module, if you will, or separate license from Microsoft within the Office platform. It is very absolutely standard. You can absolutely receive it if you're using the Office 365 subscription now. It can be added to your current subscription. Don't quote me on it. I think it's about $30 a user a month. So those people that you'd want to have access to this tool set, there is an investment for your organization to consider, but it's an easy add-on to existing subscriptions within Office. The next question I have is around the use of Copilot with Expedience. And talking about the content library, how these two things work together. The example I gave was really trying to show. I meant it to frame up around a contribution from some subject expert or some technical person helping to describe our roadmap of our technology or what have you, whatever it might be, that I wanted to help iterate. But that exact same iteration could have been done from the content library. And that's kind of this question. Within that content library record, I could certainly again hand it to Copilot, ask Copilot to help me iterate that record. Pardon me. And then once I've vetted and approved that iteration, once I've tested, I've signed off on. I've had the appropriate eyes laid on this output, so we can be sure that what it's done is trustworthy. We bring that trustworthy, vetted, and approved record back into the content library, and that can be done directly inside of Microsoft Word. I didn't feel like it was appropriate to show that workflow here because it's a little bit much to digest in one fell swoop, but certainly it's a really beautiful synergy. That's those arrows going together I was mentioning before, from the content library out to Gen AI and Gen AI back to the content library. Really, really powerful one too. Okay, I think that might be most of the questions. I've got a few other that are kind of reiterations of those same 2 points. Let's leave it there for now. I've really respect everyone's time and don't want to keep you longer than I need to. Certainly, if you have other thoughts or other questions, or if you'd like to see more examples, or would like to see maybe how these connect to your specific needs or challenges, happy to do so. Please feel free to reach out to me. But with that, I'll conclude and say thank you so much for joining today's presentation, and I hope you found value in this discussion. Talk soon.